Thank you, Chair Takano and Ranking Member Bost. Like others on this hearing, I am very concerned at some of the tenor of what I hear. I'm a 24-year military veteran. My husband is a 30-year military veteran. My brother served in Vietnam. And like Ms. Capter, I believe that their service should be recognized and honored. And Representative Capter, let me also say my prayers are with you and your veteran friend who is suffering at this time. So I'm very concerned with the talk, and I don't recall if it was Colonel Plesher or Dr. Jones who had listed a litany of those individuals or personnel, veterans that they had considered domestic terrorists. It perhaps was Dr. Jones, but did you include in that list Major Nadal Hassan, Dr. Jones, or Colonel Plesher?
Major Hassan is definitely in our data set, obviously inspired by Al-Qaeda's ideology and in contact at that time with Anwar al-Awlaki. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for that, because even at the 10-year anniversary honoring the 13 who were killed at Fort Hood, and an Army Times article, it still does not reference that as an act of either Islamic terrorism or domestic terrorism. So I found that interesting. And I think that the definition, and I think this has been brought up on, when somebody migrates to violence or what's domestic terrorism, I find it extraordinarily concerning. Memos and testimony from Janet Reno way back to 1999, talking about veterans, pro-life, pro-gun, Second Amendment individuals as being more susceptible to domestic terrorism. I think recent comments by this administration on people who attend school board meetings and voice their discontent with actions of the educational system as domestic terrorism, and asking for the FBI to investigate those individuals. One can raise their voice and exercise their freedom of speech, freedom to associate, freedom to petition their government, and they are not domestic terrorists. And I'm very concerned about the labeling as such. And so this question, I think, is more for, I apologize for our Iraq and Afghanistan, Mr. Butler, that a recent poll published by Georgetown University found that respondents ranked division in the country, this gets to your point, as the number one issue facing the country's future. Too often pundits speak of division and violence in the same breath. And divisions can and have led to violence, but there are also plenty of different viewpoints that are held by peaceful, law-abiding citizens. And to your point, and I think you were making this reference, how do we protect free speech while also condemning and thwarting violence?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am, for the question. I think the key really is differentiating between upholding free speech and being critical of those that wantonly spread lies, misinformation, and disinformation. It's still technically free speech, but I don't think we as leaders, we as folks that are hopefully many of the country are looking to for facts and truthfulness, should be repeating those or turning to them to make political points. I think there's a difference there, and that's one of the many things that we focus on is we need to get away from using misinformation, disinformation, and outright lies to try and paint a false narrative of what's going on in the country.
Well, sometimes an outright lie is obvious, but other times it depends on who the arbiter is of what's misinformation and disinformation. And I can say that both as a military veteran and as a physician and former director of public health in response to comments I've heard about infection-acquired immunity and for COVID-19. So I think I understand your point, but that leads us down this slope of who is it and what authority is it that then determines what speech is misinformation or disinformation. But I do understand the point you're making. Is it possible, in your experience, that there are similarities and differences in the types of target that violent extremist groups on the left and the right attack? And what can you tell us about the direction of future attacks? And I know my time is limited.
I don't know if that was directed at me as well, but I'm not sure that I'm the best qualified person to answer the question as I understood it.
Dr. Jones?
Yeah. So just to be clear, can you what specifically were you asking? Because the data is pretty broad on this.
My time's expired, so I don't think you have time to answer the question. But thank you, Chairman Chicano. Thank you, Mr. Jones, or Dr. Jones, and Mr. Butler for your responses.